Thank you so much for having me. When I think about what we've built at Eventbrite with almost 1,000 employees now worldwide, I always come back to our culture and how we work. We're often recognized for the type of team we are, the way we show up for our customers, and authentically who we are as people. And that always comes back to core values. A little known fact about Eventbrite is that we actually don't have core values written down anywhere. They're not on the wall, they're not codified in a statement, and that has been intentional. I've felt that core values are at their very best when they're simply lived and walked and breathed, and when they're a part of how you operate, not some manual that you get on day one and have to try to emulate to the best of your ability. However, I've been swayed a bit. As we continue to expand rapidly all over the world, it's become clear to me that we do need to write down some of the historical context that's gone into who we are as people at Eventbrite. We call ourselves Brightlings. So we have been drafting values, and it's been quite the experience. We have these really fun, pithy statements like let them in, and go all in, and choose brilliance, and be a creator. And I'm happy that I can remember them, but they don't really resonate with me as words on a page. Because, you walk into any great company and they do have values. There's teamwork and dedication and perseverance, confidence. But what do those actually mean? How do you actually define values? It's 2008. We're cramming ourselves into Kevin's Mini Cooper. Kevin is my co-founder, our former CEO, and my husband. The bad choice in cars. And we get into this Mini Cooper. There's 5 of us. We're driving the 35 miles down to Sand Hill Road. We've decided that our little idea that has now turned into a company is ready to take on outside financing. We've bootstrapped the company for almost 3 years, and we think that late 2008 is a great time to go out and raise our first outside round of funding. Every day we get in that car and we drive down to Sand Hill Road. 27 firms. 27 no's. Every time we hear an objection, whether it be our business model, traction, the obvious macroeconomic environment that's happening behind us, something strange happens. We don't get down. We get more convicted. We start to build this almost superpower sense of conviction that we're on the right track, that despite rejection after rejection after rejection, we actually have something. There's a there, and we believe in what we're doing. And I can tell you that's not because we were a bunch of rebels who sort of loved, not listening to people. We were listening. But every time we described our business, we became more convinced that there was real value there. So it was Kevin's idea to leave our 2009 business plan with every firm that we met with. And that was seen as somewhat of a risky idea because nobody knew what was going to happen in 2009. Companies were struggling to keep the lights on. Many companies were shutting down around us. For Eventbrite, 2009 was a year where we not only survived, but we thrived. We had to really get down to the brass tacks of what mattered. We didn't have much money left. Probably close to what you had when you were stealing toner. So we focused on the event creator, and we focused on how our business enablement platform could make them more successful, especially since times were tough. And we started to see something really interesting happening with our event creators. An entrepreneurial spirit came alive, and we started to understand that we weren't just democratizing ticketing, we were enabling entrepreneurs and enabling business owners. And so towards the end of 2009, we went back to a few select VC firms. Obviously, things had thawed a bit, but we also had beat our plan. And when we met with those VC firms, that was a novel idea that we had actually left our plan and did what we said we were going to do. And on top of that, we had this added conviction that had been born in that moment of rejection, but had grown over time through that year of operating the business. The story has a very happy ending. We got 3 term sheets, so we had a choice, and we chose our first choice of partner. And it just so happens that was Sequoia. I was not paid to say this. They had the worst terms out of all 3, and the best team. And we chose the people. And it'll be another day that I can stand up here and tell you what that's meant to us for the last decade. But I'm definitely a believer that choosing the right people and the right partners can mean all the difference in the world. It's 2010, fully capitalized, we're feeling great. We're sitting at brunch in Austin, Texas during South by Southwest. It's the first year that Eventbrite has arrived at this music conference. We had broken through to the music category, and we were having breakfast with some of our top customers and top prospects, music festival organizers, venue owners. We just sat down to this delicious brunch in a beautiful restaurant when I noticed that many of my teammates' phones were starting to buzz on the table, all at the same time. It was like a symphony, but a dreadful one, because that typically meant that something was wrong. I looked across the table at Kevin, and his face had gone white, and he looked up and said, "The site's down." We're sitting amongst 30 of the industry's finest, and we have to act like nothing's wrong. But that wasn't a choice. We couldn't just stay. So a subset of us got together, scurried across the street to the W Hotel, found a random corner where we could all plug in, and we started to get to work. What happened was one of the premier music festivals called the Great Googa hosted by Superfly, which is also the promoter who puts on Outside Lands, had taken a risk by using Eventbrite for the first time, and the on sale had crashed our site. This was an epic failure. We didn't have any time to really take stock of what had happened or what that was going to mean. We had to get to work. Everybody jumped in. We had a portion of people working on customer support. We got the Great Googa organizers on the phone. They were not very happy. And we stayed on the phone with them and our ops team for about 6 hours until we had finally managed to get the site back up, get the tickets back on sale, and sell out the event. This wasn't a happy day, and certainly many changes had to be made to our back-end infrastructure after that. But it made us stronger as a team. Going all in meant that everyone forgot whatever task was at hand, having a fancy brunch with prospect customers, or even their function. We had our head of engineering answering customer support emails, because remember, the entire site was down. It wasn't just one customer that was in a lurch. And so what I learned that day was great teams and great leadership come out when the going gets tough. And there's always a magical moment where your team shows up and does the right thing, and that's something you can be proud of, even in the face of failure. It's 2011. We've recovered from the Great Googa disaster. It's summer in New York. It's about 90 degrees outside, humidity of, 107%. Is that possible? We're moving slowly through the humidity in Central Park, where we have bit off a bit more than we could chew. We're not only ticketing the largest free concert that's ever happened in Central Park, we're managing the access control for a 60,000-person event in Central Park. I'm not sure how many of you have done this, but it's a really complicated task. Multiple gates, lots of people lined up for hours and hours and hours, a multi-million-dollar stage, Black Eyed Peas about to go on to play one of their last shows together, and you got about 24 people in bright orange Eventbrite t-shirts trying to act like they know what they're doing. About halfway through the day, we start seeing some alarming weather forecasts appear on our radar. One of our engineers, Bob Van Zant, is also a pilot, so he has this Doppler system on his computer, and he's starting to look a little worried. Out of nowhere, from our little trailer on Central Park West, we start to see this cloud come down. You can see it all the way down Central Park West. It's starting to come near us, and it looks like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from, anybody? Yeah, Ghostbusters? Okay, or the remake. And all of a sudden, it occurs to us that if there's a freak lightning and thunderstorm, what happens to an event in Central Park? We start researching. The first thing that one of our teammates comes up with is a free concert in the park where Diana Ross was to perform, and it got rained out, and there was a riot. And now there's a Diana Ross playground at Central Park because the riot destroyed that whole part of the park. It's not a good sign. So we start worrying, and we're like, okay, what's the contingency plan here? Well, there was no contingency plan. We just had to get to work. So as it starts sprinkling, they open the gates, and we start scanning people in. We built this system, again, no business scanning in 60,000 people for a Black Eyed Peas concert. About 4,000 people in, NYPD, who has the authority to do this, calls the concert. They say, not gonna go forward, too dangerous. We have to then turn 4,000 people around and send them back out to the 56,000 other people who are standing on all around the park and explain to them that they're not gonna be able to see this historic event. And we're wearing Eventbrite t-shirts, remember. So that was not a happy moment. As we're all sort of trying to shepherd people out of the park and feeling really downtrodden ourselves, we get together and we're trying to ascertain what just happened and how this is going to go forward. What's going to happen to this concert? And Kevin comes in out of nowhere, dripping from, it's now pouring and there's thunder, lightning, and it's a violent situation. He comes in with a huge smile on his face. And I turn to him and I go, what are you so giddy about? He's like, we scanned 4,000 people in 15 minutes. We can do this. Sure enough, 6 months later, we were given the chance to do it again, and we pulled it off without a hitch. Now, that type of optimism and the amount of perseverance and the conviction that we've had are all values that we've lived because they've come out of real experiences. So the lesson that I want to leave you today with is whether you're setting up your own company or you're joining another company that you haven't started, values do actually matter. They matter in how you live and how you show up. And if you're joining a company that already has values, ask for real-life examples. Don't just take fancy worded statements as something you should, really trust and try to emulate. Find out what these values actually mean from how they've been lived and the experiences that have really driven to those values. And if you're an entrepreneur who's creating a company for the first time, consider it a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And be very careful about how you state your values. Maybe you live them first before you write them down. Thank you.